Well, hello, White Sox fans, and welcome to another edition of the FutureSox podcast. My name is Ian Eskridge. Joining me over here is James Fox. How are you, James?
Hey, man, how are you? What's going on?
I'm doing good. There's obviously the actual White Sox team is they've been all over the media for the past week, so we'll bring that up. But there's been some exciting things happening in the last week between the Cannon Ballers playoffs, the Barons playoffs, and the thing that I wanted to start off tonight with was the hiring of another special assistant to the GM. This one is said to be supposed to be heading up the international scouting department, but there's not really like a super clear thing yet, so I guess we wait to find out from Chris Getz actually. But David Keller has been hired. You have some thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I just my typical Sunday morning, get up early with the kids, and I'm like, hey, Bob Nightingale today. Like I always try to go read those notes just because there's always stuff we always talk about this. Like he just buries news in there. And I was kind of disappointed. I don't think any White Sox beat writers are listening, but it's like how is this tucked away in a Bob Nightingale piece? I think it's pretty significant news. Now, that doesn't mean that David Keller is this wonderful scout that's going to save the org, right? I tweeted, wow, this is huge news. And people were like, is it good? And I'm like, I don't know. I don't know anything about David Keller other than some of the info you're going to give about places where he's worked. And I know that people at the team think he's great and are very excited, whatever, right? But the fact that Bob Nightingale's like, oh yeah, they quietly hired David Keller to run international scouting. And I'm like, whoa.
Yeah.
So then it's kind of a big job, but so then I kind of railed just about the titles and how the White Sox are weird and they don't get Mike Shirley is the director of amateur scouting, right? So why is this difficult? Hire a person to be the director of international scouting, but they've just never done it. Even Marco Patti was special assistant to the GM international scouting, right? Jim Thome, special assistant to the GM, but they have two very different jobs. So look, I've heard some stuff this week, and Francis Romero, great Dominican reporter, had said similar that he's still expecting another hire, whether it's international director or somebody to work on that international side. And then maybe David Keller oversees that department. I have no idea, but I think we're expecting multiple hires. It's good they hired a guy that's seemingly respected, he's leaving the Mets. So yeah, another outside hire, guy that's supposedly going to be running lots of stuff. I just don't really know that much about him other than, Bob Nightingale said very well respected.
Yeah. So I went and did some digging and, I found out some actually some what to me is very good news. So he went to Bucknell and majored in business, got his bachelor's there. And while he was there, he was running, he was managing a high school baseball team. And just in that whole thing, he ended up figuring out that he wanted to do baseball for a living. And so he applied with the Phillies, and he interviewed with a VP over there. And I guess the VP said that it was the best interview he had done in 20 years. So, I mean, I guess that's good things. But so he worked in the marketing department over there for a while. And after being with the Phillies for a while, he learned that he felt like he was kind of leaning towards operations. So he started talking with Ed Wade, the GM of the Phillies at the time, the guy who was the architect of all those mid 2000s World Series teams with Ryan Howard and Shane Victorino and all those guys. And he got moved into baseball operations. And so he did that for a couple of years, I guess, and then took a spot with an independent league team called the Camden River Sharks, which are basically it used to be right across the river from the Vet or whatever, or Century Ballpark, whatever the heck they're calling it these days. And so he was there for a little while. And while he was there, he was doing all the negotiations of contracts and signing players and all that stuff. And in that, he ended up running into and meeting AJ Hinch, who at the time was the director of the minors for the Diamondbacks. And so he got hired by the Diamondbacks as a scout. Then he moved again to the Mets as a scout. And then he got hired by Theo Epstein in the Red Sox and worked over there. And he was there during the time when they won the World Series in 2013. So he was over there. So he's been a part of that organization. Then the Marlins hired him as the director of scouting. And then he got fired from there after 3 years. I don't know. Personally, I think I didn't look at the timeline, but I have to imagine it was like a regime change over there because that's happened a couple of times. And then he ended up going back to the Mets scouting. So he's been with a bunch of different clubs. He's seen the way things work, through a bunch of other organizations. Probably, I like you said, I don't know, too much about the guy. I just know that he's been in multiple places, and he's been in places where they've, had some winning, at least, whether or not, he has, exclusive knowledge or was part of, building that particular team, but at least it's something.
Well, yeah, and it's like it seems like leadership and management experience, right? So it's probably something. I mean, look, Chris got I heard just that the White Sox are very happy to bring him aboard, right? Now, I've never really heard the opposite. Like they just hired a guy and they think he's terrible, right? But I mean, so I guess this is an insinuation just that he wasn't going to stay in the David Stearns front office or David Stearns got rid of whatever, right? I don't really care about that. The thing I don't really know is what was he doing with the Mets prior to Stearns, right? Was he doing international scouting? Was he just a pro scout? Was he the head? Because it's not this stuff is not clear. And Bob Nightingale just said hired respected scout, right? He could be doing lots of different things in New York. You know what I mean? So
from what his LinkedIn page says, he was a pro scout with the Mets. So, I mean, take that for what it's worth. I mean, that doesn't mean that he's necessarily, he was there twice. So that doesn't necessarily mean that that's what he was doing the first time or the second time. I just know that that's what it says on his LinkedIn. So
yeah. And he could be overqualified for that role. You know what I mean? So, yeah.
The only guy that I've heard the White Sox not sound completely convinced when they hired a guy was Matt Lyle.
There's all the pushback, and I was totally
confused how that goes.
I remember right away Matt Lyle followed me on Twitter, and I was like, "Oh yeah, buddy!" And then I realized he follows 9,000 people.
Yeah, well, there is that.
It's kind of crazy. I'm like, oh, okay, so he just follows everyone that follows him, which is I was wondering if we hear from David Keller. I put a request in. Have not heard back, obviously. I had heard that I had heard that the beat, some of the beat had asked to, and the White Sox said not now. So maybe there is maybe Getz is speaking at the end of the year and he'll talk about new hires and more hires. And obviously you put something up on screen. Our buddy Joshua Strong asked about a director of analytics. So they have a director of analytics. I think it's Matt Koenig, but again, that's another department where I haven't heard this for sure, but I believe a significant revamp is coming, right? And we kind of talked about this on our previous show. All this money is what is it? It's not. I want to say Ben Mahler. That's the guy that on Fox News had all the sports rumors, and it's Brian Mahler, who's the guy that the Navy SEAL that Chris Getz hired.
Yes,
where he's taking the money and recommending the money to go into different departments and whatnot. And one of those departments is definitely analytics. I don't know what that means. I don't know if that means the White Sox just make 2 hires or something and they're still way behind everybody else, or if they're going to go modern. I have no idea, but I do think that's one of the points of emphasis for sure is just how tiny that department is and what they're using. And maybe they'll be able to tell the difference between different types of spin rates now. So,
all right. So, this transitions pretty well into the second topic of the evening, which was the Britt Ghiroli and Ken Rosenthal article about the dysfunction of the White Sox. And, among these things that you are talking about, the analytics department is said to be paying through an outside agency to get the analytics, but then they also apparently made their own adjusted analytics. And from what this report says is that they couldn't come to a consensus on how to, which numbers to use and which ones were important, which ones weren't important. And it makes you just, like you just did, shake your head. It's what are we doing here? And the fact that, after years, you hear reports about Jose Abreu handing out iPads so guys can watch film on their swings and try and look at numbers and stuff like that. And, this is just more of the same stuff. And the thing that they stressed is that this stuff is still ongoing with the franchise right now. So
yeah, and that's just one thing, obviously, and there's a bunch that we can get into. I mean, it's just we've made the jokes, man, right? About and I was on I went on Sox in the Basement, so people have probably heard me say this, but we've made the jokes about this being like Larry's Corner Hardware Store or like whatever, right? That it's a mom and pop shop and haha, tongue in cheek, like it literally is, like it's absolutely ridiculous. And I don't know if it's just one of those things where it's like whoever talks to Jerry last, like that's what happens, right? But it does seem like, and I will say, I feel like we're gonna get into the Ken Williams and Rick Hahn a little bit, but it's like. I don't understand how for 20 years, how do you not understand the man that you're working for, right? It just kind of I feel like this could have been done because I will say it seems like for Chris Getz and all of his shortcomings, right? And I don't know if he can evaluate players. I don't know that he'll make good trades, but I feel like he understands the assignment this time, right? I think he understands this org is really screwed up and I need to fix it before we even consider trying to win baseball games. And I think he's found a way to whether that means they don't sign Austin Jacksons anymore or whatever, right? I need $6 million for this center fielder to try to win an extra game. Maybe he takes that money and spends it on infrastructure or these departments. And maybe Rick and Kenny were able to do that too. And they just were screw it. I want to try to get a wild card. I don't know. I don't have that answer, right? But it does seem like there's at least an emphasis placed on all of these areas where they're just lagging behind, and it's not 5 years behind. It's it's bad. It just, the Brick, and we were just kind of picking on Britt Ghiroli, and then she wrote that great piece a couple days later. So sorry, Britt.
yeah, I mean,
it was still a bad take, but yeah.
That take was bad. So I will defend that one and I'll die on that hill. That was a bad one. But the very next day or 2 days after that article dropped and I was like, oh, all right. Well, at least she's got, some info here. I don't know if you've paid attention to the Foul Territory podcast at all here in recent days, but there was a point where AJ was talking and he was talking about the analytics that were, with the White Sox. And he said, yeah, so the guy that was there when I was there, yeah, he's still there and he still sits up in the press box or up in the suite. And I just see him on his laptop the entire time. He's like, I don't actually know what he does. So, who knows?
I mean, even just going over to the minor league side a little bit and look, I thought it was a lot different lately. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. But the whole oh, go work on your command. What does that mean? I don't know. Just make your command better, pitch better, whatever. I knew that was a thing when maybe I first started doing this a little bit, but I did think the longer Getz was there, stuff like that kind of improved a little bit. But
yeah,
my goodness gracious, no personal plan, you need to improve your command, so do this, and this, right? Instead of just hey, your command sucks, fix it. We'll see you in we'll see you in February.
Yeah, throw the ball low in the zone. Your sinker should play well down low in the zone.
Oh my God.
Thank you so much.
And you wonder why they lose all the time.
Yeah. I mean, it's actually with how rough this report is, the fact that they've managed to win as many games, a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
Is actually astounding. For those of you who do not know, we kind of skimmed over this part. They do not know what we're talking about. Two writers, Ken Rosenthal and Britt Ghiroli, did I don't know, kind of tested the wind with 40 current and former employees and players that played for the White Sox here as of late. And it's a long and arduous read if you are a
It
White
is,
Sox
yes.
fan. And there's not a whole lot of good that is in this article if you have not read it. One of the favorite things that's been a lightning rod on social media is the fact that the White Sox are using a airplane for their team charter that
Yeah.
was
The same one the
introduced at
same one that the Wright brothers used, apparently.
I don't think it's a biplane, but I mean it's pretty close. It's like the Airbus 320, which I think was introduced in 1986, and it hasn't really been updated so much. There's not a whole lot of first class seating, and one of the quotes from the article, a new player got onto the plane for the first time and said, "What? No show plane?"
Yeah.
And apparently all the players laughed, and they were all having a great time.
Yeah, so some people have said Tommy Pham. What do you think? I don't know. My guess was Robbie Grossman, and that's why they traded him so soon, so quickly. Because the White Sox are so spiteful that it's like,
Oh, yeah.
you trade this guy because he doesn't want to be here. It's like,
Oh, you're not happy about this plane? All right.
you're gonna make fun of the plane. Well, now we're gonna send you to the Rangers. Yeah.
Yeah. Have fun playing with all those guys who make money and
Yeah,
stuff.
but I mean, there were so many guys that I forgot. Like Kevin Pillar was on the White Sox. You remember that? That was this year.
Yeah, for a few minutes. And I mean, like, I remember that video where he was like almost crying because he didn't have a spot on a major league team.
And then he came back for less money.
Yeah, he signed signed with the Angels and then moved to the Angels and hit like 320 or something.
He got good somehow. Yeah.
Yeah. Ugh.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, and I mean, look, there's a lot in there. There's that. There's the spin rate stuff that I think. But here's the thing. I do think anybody that's been paying attention kind of knew a lot of this stuff or suspected it, right? This is just like the hit you in the face with it. Like, oh yeah, it's all true, by the way. Like, this is how it was. And all of the factions, like Rick Hahn had Jeremy Haber, Kenny had his kid, like all these people that are just like trying to stay employed that are like incompetent. And like Jerry Reinsdorf's best quality and worst quality is his loyalty. Like, he sounds like a tremendous boss, but like he's a terrible baseball owner. Like, just one of the worst, right? And he would be seen as one of the worst owners in all of sports if he didn't luck his way into Michael Jordan. So, like, it's just one of those things, you know? It's just like, my God, this is like not a stupid person. It's just not. Like, you don't become a billionaire making real estate deals like being a stupid person, but it's like he does not know how to do this. And especially like once we got past like 1995, it was like, okay, well, the sport like skyrocketed and got popular and everybody made real money, and he was like, nope, and he probably should have bowed out, but he's still hanging on. So,
well, see, the thing is, he doesn't golf or play bridge.
Yeah, he watches baseball.
What else is he going to do, right? So I kind of wanted to delve into that because I knew that like one of the top things that you would, of course, zone in on when you saw that article was Kenny Williams. So let's talk about that. He one of the quotes in there is that he was a platinum employee. And he just kind of showed back up one time once the White Sox started winning again and started doing all sorts of things, making trades, making decisions.
So my favorite line in the piece, you know what it is, right?
Is it the one about the "Don't make me go there"?
No, not that one. So he said that it was like seen as a negative or held against him that he could watch a player one time and determine whether they'd be an all-star or not. So, like, my thought is, like, why weren't his teams better? If that's true. Like, what a sanctimonious piece of garbage that guy is. Like, now, here's the thing. Like, you won a title in 05, he'll always deserve credit for that. Like, that flag flies forever.
Sure, yeah.
But then he tried to replicate that team for 20 years. And he said that he was going to take a step back. And, like, look, he was always the executive vice president of the organization. So even for all the like kudos Rick Hahn got with the rebuild, and then all the blame he took like for it not working and some of the bad trades and some of the stupid signings, like Kenny was involved in all of it. Like this was this two-headed monster that apparently couldn't work together, you know? Like I don't know, man. Like the fact that he just would just like come down and he's like, all right, I feel like being in charge again. Like, what are you guys working on? No, we're not going to do that. We're going to do this instead. Like, it just makes total sense in hindsight. Like, looking back at some of the moves, some of the decisions, it's like, oh, yeah, that's like a front office that's like not on the same page, right? It is not a sole decision maker. It's just, I mean, when I heard, like, you know, we have countless draft stories, or at least I do, and you've heard a bunch of them too. It's like where you see Keenan Walker go like 13 for 18 in a tournament in Arizona one weekend, and that's your first round pick because of it. Like, but I mean, you know, apparently he wasn't an all-star that Kenny thought he was going to be. You know, I don't know. My whole, like, do you think, like, Kenny went on record, right? Do you think he thought that he was like going to come off positively? Or is he like not in on the joke? I mean, I just like don't understand what he gets out of like some of the comments that he made.
Well, yeah, there is that. And, you know, Britt Ghiroli on Foul Territory, she actually came on twice for this article. And the second time, you know, they were talking about the quote of when Tony La Russa was hired, and he said, "I'm still not ready to talk about that. It takes me to a place where, you know, I can't be the person that I aspire to be," or something along that lines. And then he said, and they're like, "Oh, well, you know, what do you want us to put down?" And he's like, "Oh, you can quote me, you know, on that." So it's just like, you know, assumes no blame in this whatsoever. You know, just everything is somebody else's fault. You know, things not working out, totally not his problem. You know, he had nothing to do with it. So,
well, so the thing about La Russa, I guess, is a little bit surprising, right? Because I think we knew for sure that Hahn didn't want La Russa. And we didn't even get to this. Like, all of the Hinch stuff was in there. Like, I don't know if you know this. Like, at the time I was writing for Southside Sox, and I was getting like pretty good information like around that time. And like I wrote up a whole article about like, oh, like these are some of the candidates for manager that they're going to interview, but they'll probably ultimately hire AJ Hinch, blah, blah, blah. And then, oh yeah, this Tony rumor's out there too, this sort of thing. Right. And I was like firmly like I had heard from people that like AJ Hinch was like looking for houses. Like, I mean, it's why 5 minutes after Rick Renteria was fired, like the best baseball insiders in the game are like, "Oh, watch AJ Hinch for this job. Like, that makes a lot of sense. Young White Sox, like blah blah blah." And then, like, no, then the hammer was dropped, right? And it's Tony. But I did think that like Kenny maybe was a little bit more on board with that decision than Rick, because if Kenny was as mad about it as Rick, like I honestly thought like he might have been able to convince Jerry that it was a bad idea. Like I think like I don't know that Jerry ever listened to Rick, but I do think he would listen to Kenny like a lot. But not that time. I think it was kind of going to be full steam ahead. Like Jerry was scared to death of the AJ Hinch thing and the scandal and everything that came with him. And he's like, "I'll see if my buddy wants to do it." Right. And I think when that first came out, people are like, "Yeah, right. Tony's not going to manage again." And not to rehash it all, but I mean, it's like, you know, and then it just kind of happened. Right. So, but yeah, like all that's in there too. Like the piece is really long for anybody that hasn't read it. You know, it's like a manifesto. And then of course, Rick Hahn, like, has no reason to speak publicly. He's getting paid. He's on vacations with his family. My guess
and he
is
probably wants another job at some point as well.
My guess is even if he's like somebody's like senior, or maybe he'll be special assistant to the GM somewhere, you know,
somewhere,
you know, doing some contract stuff or doing whatever. There's no reason for Rick Hahn to speak, but I mean, like, again, like I know Rick Hahn is like seen as this like incompetent like baseball person, but he's also not stupid. Like, how did he not see this happening to him for years and years and years? Like, it's just like, dude, you're not in charge of anything.
Yeah.
Right?
I was like, actually,
Rick Hahn made all these bad trades, and it's like, did he? I don't know. Like, I don't know who did what anymore. Now I'm totally confused.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, like, what, like, if you were to think about percentages, like, where do you think Rick Hahn lands on this? Because, you know, since he and Kenny got fired it's been a constant dumping on Rick Hahn. And, when people do it, I'm like, either I respond to them or I just think in my head, well, how do I know how much of this is Rick Hahn's fault when I know that I know for a fact, how I've seen Kenny make moves and how he, has a, just, I mean, for the lack of a better word, just arrogance, about him. How much of this do I know that Rick Hahn is actually, at fault for?
Well, I think he was making a lot of decisions like when they were bad, when Kenny was checked out and not interested, right? But you never know when Kenny's just going to come down and drop the hammer and decide to do something, right? It's like why Jake Eater is here. And obviously you and I like didn't mind that trade, but I mean, like, that's just another example of like, like organizational like issues, like him being able to do that. Look, I think Rick Hahn is to blame for like a lot of stuff, mostly like just like letting this happen. Like they didn't understand how to work for their boss, right? Like I always go back to the summer of Harper and Machado and like just not understanding that you're not going to go to a certain point, right? And letting that be like your off season instead of doing something else, right? I think it's kind of like, if you know that you have all this money to spend, well, maybe you should just like not even entertain that market and go add different players, right? Because it's going to be 300 million. Your owner's not going to go there. So like, what are we doing here? I think they always I always got the impression that they kind of thought that they could convince Jerry to do certain things. And then that just like kind of never happened. Where it seems like Chris Ketz like isn't really doing that. He's like working around that. He knows like, well, he's not going to do this, this, and this. So we're going to develop our own pitching. I'm going to spend money on infrastructure. And then if I do get like $150 million to spend at some point, like, I'll just like fill in the gaps. But like, we have to have our own young pitching. We have to have this, because like if he has to go buy a few bats in an off season, I think that's doable. Right. But you can't just like have a team of free agency with Jerry. So I don't know. The thing with Rick is like, I think he was undercut a lot, but like, look, man, he took the job. Like, I don't know that he was ever first in command because there was a guy higher on like the organizational flowchart than him that everybody just kind of ignored and forgot that was like existed. Like I had heard too many draft stories to believe that Kenny Williams was not involved like all those years. You know what I mean? Like when he would just like come into the draft room and be like, I think we should take this guy. And he's like the highest ranking official in the room, after not doing any of the work. So, if that same thing happened, like at the trade, like I could totally see, because that mentioned that in there, right? The trade deadline, Kenny like gets the itch like a couple of days before the deadline and he's working the phones. Like he loves those parts of the job, right? But he didn't want to do the day to day anymore. But then I could totally see where he's kind of checked out of the process and like the organization suffers because of it.
Also out of the loop with scouting and all that stuff, which is kind of an issue as well.
But he would just need to go see a guy one time and he'd be able to tell
just once. Yeah, just once, and I'll know. And one of the last thing I wanted to touch on with this article is Jerry's meddling in just getting his hands in stuff all the time and not letting his guys do their jobs. That's I mean, I don't know how much you want to get into that, but I mean, that was just like the last thing that I wanted to touch on from that really stood out to me.
Well, I think you hear from people that he's like this hands-off owner, but like what kind of stuff do you have to clear with him, right? Like, I think it's perfectly normal, like, if you're going to sign a $300 million free agent, like it goes through the owner, man. Like, those are like ownership level decisions, you know what I mean? But like Rick Hahn made a comment one time that they sold, like, remember like when they traded for Samardzija and then I think they signed David Robertson and they were all excited. And then like a couple weeks later, they signed Melky Cabrera, and Rick Hahn at the time, like bragged that like he went in to like beg Jerry and then Jerry finally like relented and let him do it. And it was like, it's a 3-year deal for $44 million. Like if Jed Hoyer signs a player for $44 million, do you think he even needs to like text Tom Ricketts and tell him about it? Like,
I
Like, I
mean,
don't
the way
know,
you
you know?
hear Cubs fans complain, yeah,
Well,
probably,
fine. So
but,
you whatever,
a real organization, no,
yeah, like,
probably not.
use Dave Dombrowski and the Phillies owner, right? Like, is he
Yeah.
texting is it Middleton? I think it's yeah, it's Frank Middleton somebody. But yeah, like, no. I mean, it's, like, ridiculous. And he has his hands in all these things that don't matter, right? So, I don't know. I mean, do you think um that Kenny and Rick would have been able to just kind of like punt a season intentionally and use the free agent money to fix infrastructure, or does Jerry just finally realize how bad it is and now he's letting Getz do it? I don't
That's
really
my
know. I don't
guess.
really know that answer. You know,
I kind of feel like that because my whole overall thoughts of this article in general is more or less that it's not anything that we not anything, but the theme of it is not anything that any White Sox fan did not already know. The problem is that it's new details and things that are documented that we didn't know. And it makes it that much worse because you see the dysfunction and you see the problems. So
I like that they led with the plane because it's like funny, right? But it's like not even close to their biggest issue.
not even close.
Like it's just not like that's not like affecting winning and losing. It's just like a funny thing. And I think what AJ even said, like, oh, he kind of liked having a whole back row to himself, you know, like
Yeah.
on in the,
Yeah.
you know, whatever coach or yeah, like whatever it was. Like just yeah, he's like, yeah, this is fine. Like I'll just have these 3 seats for me and put all my stuff next to me or whatever, you know. So
Yeah.
like,
I mean, it's different from the way things are now, though. And that is a valid point that was made on there is that, other people said, yeah, okay, you're fine with it, but the way things are when
yeah,
guys come from other teams and then they see this play and they're like,
yeah.
what am I doing here?
Well, so the
So
other thing that I found interesting is like they talked to somebody who was there like briefly that kind of said like, "Oh yeah, it's really bad," and then I left. Like, I don't recall many like front office people getting poached to go other places. Like, there's not this long history under Rick and Kenny of their like lieutenants leaving. Like the same people have worked here like since Jerry's owned the team.
yeah,
Like Dan,
that's a good question.
Like
I
Dan
don't know
Dan
who that would be.
Fabian is like director of baseball operations or whatever, and he does some analytics and some pro scouting and dabbles here, dabbles there. Like he's worked there forever. There's like just people like that have just like worked there since Jerry's taken over. So yeah, I don't know. I
Sam
don't know whether
Mondry
I don't know
Cohen.
that he wasn't there long, and now he's the assistant
That's
GM in Miami. You know,
that's what I'm saying is that maybe that was one of the guys that they talked to because I'm sure that they probably talked
yeah,
to Jake Berger as well
right.
because I kind of have an idea that maybe the text that said, "Oh, this is what the major leagues is like," and
Mm-hmm.
texted everybody that was on the team. I
That
would
makes sense. Yeah,
imagine that those two guys are in the same place, so it wouldn't surprise me.
right. And that's Jake Berger. So, and that's clearly a guy that like came up with the Sox and only knew that way of doing things and then went
Yep.
somewhere else, you know.
Yep.
So, yeah. Michael Kopech could feel similarly, I guess, but
Oh,
he at
I'm
least
sure.
he at least was in the Red Sox system for a little bit, like before he came to the White Sox.
Yeah, and I mean, he can blame whoever he wants for how for what happened to him,
Yeah.
but from all the reports that everybody says that he just didn't listen to the
Yeah.
coaching, I think that he would not blame
Right.
everybody else.
What do you think about Barstool Dave's report that Jerry like rallied the troops to like have a meeting about it after it published?
Well, he got quoted in the story, so I don't know what he thought the story was about.
Right, but do you think like Getz got himself into trouble with some of his quotes, like where he's kind of because weren't there Getz quotes where he's like, "Oh yeah, I think I know how to handle the old man," like sort of thing. Like it's not that I think that's me being tongue in cheek and like whatever. But like I think there were quotes in there where he's like, "Oh, I found him pretty reasonable. You just have to approach it like this, and this." Like like you have to like treat him like he's a freaking 10-year-old. Like. He's like, what do you mean by this, Chris? Like, like, do you still want to work here? Kim Ng's available. So, like,
Yeah. So did you happen to see the PV article?
I did, but
I
that's also a very long time ago.
Fair enough. That was like
Like
what
when he was here,
12 years ago or
I think it
something
was
like that.
9 to 13, I believe.
Yeah.
Something 8,
So yeah.
2008 to 13. And look, the White Sox training staff basically like saved his career. It's pretty funny. Like, I don't know. Like, and I don't know if this was just like stories from my father or whatever, but like I was always under the impression that like Herm Schneider was really good.
Yeah, I mean,
Apparently not, though.
well, I mean, but the track record though of the lack of injuries, and I don't know if it's just luck or what it was, but I mean, the track record kind of speaks for itself that they had the least amount of IL time out of anybody.
Oh yeah, they did great. I mean, they were never hurt. I mean, they did not have the same injuries that other teams had. So you're like, hey, look at this like big fat trainer that's like awesome at his job. Like everybody's kind of like, oh man, that was like always the joke. Like they're like, oh, Herm Schneider's like he'd come running out and like, but then it did get bad like after he left.
Yeah, no, it
like,
certainly did. I mean, after that guy, the picture of health would come out to take a look at a guy.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, he's in good hands, obviously.
I also didn't know the thing about him and Jerry like being best friends either.
Yeah, I mean, that's why he stuck around for so long, right? It's got to be, right?
Well, it's like a Herm Schneider's like a spy for Jerry. Don Cooper's a spy for Ken Williams. Like the whole thing is just, the whole thing is nuts.
So this comment here from Vince actually kind of does a nice job of a segue here. How confident are you now that our system will start producing decent regulars? Pitching, yes, but man, I just don't. The history is sickening. That brings us to the next topic here, which was the Keith Law article in The Athletic that just came out, which more or less just says exactly what we've been saying, what Vince says here in the comment, that we know that the pitching, that they can develop pitching. The question is the hitting side of things. Your thoughts on the article?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was fair. I think he rightly identifies that like the system is better and he's not that concerned with pitching, but like for them to ever be good again, like they're going to have to produce hitters and they haven't done it in like a decade or long, going back a long way. Like I think there's some like light at the end of the tunnel, right? Like we'll see like with the way Montgomery finished, I think Quero had a big year. Like there were some positive signs with Ramos. There's some stuff in the low minors, but I mean, like until there's a concise top-down plan, like it's going to be tough for me to like predict success or feel good about it. It's why we've come on this show pretty much every week and talked about how like a director of hitting, like org wide, would be something that we would be for. Again, you need the right guy, and like neither one of us are going to have any idea like whether it's a right guy that knows what he's doing, right? But at least it would be more evidence that they're like watching the same product that we are. The good teams have so many coaches and so much analytics like in the minors and just so many guys like with swing changes and approach changes and more than I do. It's just not easy. And they've never invested. And I think that was like the biggest tenet in the Ghiroli Rosenthal piece that we were just talking about. It's just a lack of resources invested everywhere, like across the org, like, and it's why they're so far behind. So Vince, like, I don't know. I can speak for Ian here saying, I think we hope like everybody else does, but like, I mean, I'm not super confident. We'll see how I feel like if more hires are made like this offseason.
Yeah, that's the question. And hopefully, we assume that Chris Getz is going to do the state of the franchise report with all the beat guys here as the season comes to an end, and hopefully we get a list of some of the things that they're going to be doing. I know that they have kind of mentioned some of these things here as of late that they wanted to accomplish, and we'll see. How much of that they actually do get accomplished. Who knows?
I think at least he got an early start on international because I think like you're going to have to rely on somebody to talk about these kids that are coming in January. And like, look, those are Marco Patti signings, and stuff. But I mean, like it's not stopping for you. You know what I mean? Like this current international period is up December 15th. They still have $995K to use. So my guess is that gets traded for something like an Aldrin Bautista at this point. But then January 15th, like the next cycle opens and like they have signings. Like somebody needs to talk about these signings,
Yeah.
So
who
like,
are you signing? Yeah, we know one guy. That's it.
Yeah, we know one guy, pretty highly regarded 17-year-old Cuban for $2 million. But I mean, yeah, there's more guys, and somebody has to like actually do this. So yes, like the Chris Getz end of year, whatever manifesto, I'm sure is coming. I'll be interested to hear what he has to say because he's like not really media trained, so he's like actually pretty honest, I think.
Yeah.
You
Yeah, I
know,
think so
so
too.
it's like good, you know what I mean? So it's like he's not gonna come up there and blow smoke. Like he's gonna tell you what he's gonna do, and like we might not like it, but I mean I think we're gonna like, at least have an idea of like what the plan is. So
Yeah,
that
I mean, well, we know that they're planning on building a new facility in the Dominican, which that's something that's long overdue and hopefully helps them to kind of get their reach out there into that market. But the problem is that, you know, all those guys, they're going to see these reports on the internet as well. There are Google translators, people can read and see what these articles say and just be like, yeah, no, we're not signing with you because of that,
yeah, it's like you almost have to like offer the most money. And the other thing, like the big deal there is just like that's why like I just like David Keller, like does he have relationships in the Dominican and in Venezuela and in Asia? Like I don't know, maybe he does. Maybe this is like some great hire. I don't know. But I mean that's like part of the gig is like boots on the ground, like scouting in these countries, like year round. It's why you like agree to deals with 13 and 14-year-olds, as gross as it is. Like it's
so ridiculous.
it's the business though, right? Like it's what like if you're not doing that, like you're behind. Like you just are.
Yeah.
They have no footprint in the Pacific Rim at all. They haven't signed teenage Dominicans like in years, which seems kind of dumb.
Crazy. Yeah.
But I mean, yeah, I just they and I do think Chris Getz has identified that it's like what like a essential part of like how you like run a healthy organization. I mean, he said similar to Eric Longenhagen and some others last year, like, yeah, that's an area that's pretty bad. We have to fix it. I think they're taking steps to do that. The the new facility will help, but dude, this is like years away from us noticing that there's been a change. It takes so long,
Yep.
and unless you have like scouts on the ground and relationships built and you're willing to like break from your old strategies, like I don't know how much changes, but we'll see. It seems to be a priority at least.
Yeah. Just this last thing here before we move along. James says, I'm in the red zone of life, but I hope they can win another World Series while I'm here. We are rooting for you, James. I hope so for you. I hope so for you.
Vince asked a question about the last position regulars they've drafted and developed. Has to be Tim Anderson, right?
Yeah. Because I would not count Andrew Vaughn.
No. Bad. Yes.
Yeah, I'd say that's probably the probably the best that I can come up with.
Gotta be Tim Anderson. That's a development win for sure. Like
yeah,
Tim was really good for a while and didn't have to be. Like 17th overall in the first round out of a JUCO after like being a basketball player. Like that's your typical like exciting Kenny Williams athlete pick, and it panned out. Tim was really, really good for a while.
He was. I don't know what happened, but he was very good for a time. So other White Sox talk. Let's move along here as we're 44 minutes into this jammy here. So Sean Burke got called up from Charlotte to pitch for the White Sox. He's put together a couple of real nice starts.
I feel kind of dumb. I feel dumb. I didn't know Sean Burke was going to come back and be good.
Yeah.
Like we're making these lists, and I heard your appearance on the Au Jus. Very, very nice job. And Beef tried to press you. You could have thrown some of us under the bus. That's fine. Like I would have just blamed Jasper for everything. I would have been like, this guy Jasper Ruse that writes for us. You should have seen this list. Oh my god. But no, I mean, like I didn't even rank Sean Burke because once we did it, I'm like, well, he's coming back. Like I thought I thought they were just going to put him in the bullpen.
Yeah, well, that was the thing.
He looks awesome.
Yeah, and like thing is when he came back, he did look really good. He had a couple of outings where he walked a bunch of guys, and that was kind of always the thing with Sean Burke. So didn't really surprise me. I just I think probably at the end of last year, I think I had him somewhere in the middle, and then by the preseason because I hadn't seen him.
Yeah, he got hurt again.
So long. Yeah. I just dropped him off the list for the preseason and then I put him back on. So
I think you said you thought he was dead, which is fair, I think.
I did think he was dead.
Yeah.
And this,
Yeah.
we will be bringing up Tanner McDougal here in a few minutes.
Similar
Yeah,
guys.
so Edgar Quero named Baseball America White Sox Minor League Player of the Year, which is awesome. He also is reportedly on the taxi squad now and is going to be called up and is going to make his debut with the White Sox.
Yeah, so do we know that? So I think we saw, I mean, Francis is pretty solid. So like when he
Yeah.
says stuff, it's usually true. They could just leave him on the taxi squad and have him like get the big league spread and hang out or whatever. I mean, obviously for him to play, they'd have to prematurely add, and prematurely is the wrong word, but I mean, like they have to add him to the 40. It's not necessary to add him to the 40 yet, but like if he's up, he will. But I mean, look, they're probably dumping a bunch of guys, so it's probably fine. Like if you want to play him a couple of times, like over the next week and add him, it's probably okay. Like especially if you think he's going to be one of your catchers next year. So something for the people to watch, like over the last 6.
Yeah, I mean they got it. I mean they got to do something. I mean besides $10 tickets and parking.
Yeah,
to get somebody to come out and watch that product. I'm just throwing that out there.
You think Burke goes like Sunday? You think he starts one more time?
I would think so.
Yeah,
he's still light on innings, so
Yeah.
he should be good to go. Another move that was made today, the Sox grabbed Ron Marinaccio from the Yankees. He made 16 appearances, I think, for the Yankees. Had something like a 2.5 ERA, and in the minors in AAA this year with Wilkes-Barre, the Rail Riders, I think he had something like a
90 something
.7
whip, I
whip or
think, right?
something like
Yeah.
something crazy. So that's the kind of guy that you take a flyer on.
Yeah, the Yankees are just trying to like get a guy off their 40 probably to for the playoffs or whatever. And when you're number one in the claiming wire and there's a guy you like, claim him. There's no reason not to. It's just another reliever to add to the pile. I think it wasn't this year, but previously he had like 11 Ks per 9 in the minors with not many walks. So yeah, he's 29, but that's like the exact type of guy that you grab because you could just DFA him again. Like if you need a spot at some point, it's just bring in all the guys, all the roster churn.
Well, I'm going to complain about something in a few minutes, but
oh yeah, I know what's coming.
This is the exact opposite, and I'll have to kind of eat my words, but they assigned him to the Barons.
I saw that.
So they still have, they are up 1-0 in the playoffs.
Well, there's nowhere else to send him, right?
Not that's playing other than the White Sox, right?
Yeah.
So
was he in? Was he in AAA?
He was in AAA
right now. Yeah, with the Yanks. Yeah. I mean, if you're not going to call him up, Birmingham's the only show in town.
Yeah, I mean they could use they can use a guy with a whip like that.
I mean, if their general manager was Mike Rizzo, they'd probably have Sean Burke starting a game for the Barons in the playoffs.
Here we go. All right, yeah, we'll get to that here in a second. So the manager hire timeline, obviously we don't have a definite on that yet, but you have any thoughts on that? Obviously we'll have a better idea when Chris Getz starts talking, but I mean, you don't foresee it before the World Series is over, correct?
I don't think so, but I mean, how many guys do they want to interview? How much of it is public? Have you given much thought to like how many more managers are going to get fired? Because there's there's White Sox, there's Reds now, and then I guess the Mariners, like that's not an interim.
Did you see this?
Yeah, I don't agree.
Vince. Yeah, I can't root for the Tigers. Come on, man.
I mean, I'm laughing at the Twins collapse. That's kind of funny. But,
that's great. Yeah.
Yeah.
And Cleveland, they kind of nosedived quite a bit as well, didn't they?
Yeah, it's not great. But hey, whatever. The division's too good for my liking right now. I don't really.
It really is.
I don't really like it. It's not great. What was I saying? Now I'm thrown off. I don't know. We were
about the manager.
We were talking about the manager. So I think they'd love to. From everything I've heard, I think Skip Schumacher is a very reasonable name. Like, how quickly could you hire him? How interested is Cincinnati? Does he want to come here? I don't know. I don't know any of that stuff. I know there's a relationship with with Tony La Russa. You can't say it too loud,
Again.
but I mean, so yeah, and I'm sure he knows other young utility types that are littered in the White Sox front office currently, right? So, yeah, I don't know. I don't know how quick it'll be. Probably like similar timeline to whatever Griffol was, I would think. But it doesn't seem like there's that many jobs open.
Yeah, no. I mean, I assume that a couple of guys are going to get fired, but what happens? Who knows?
Yeah, I don't know.
How you doing,
But
Vince? Good to see you.
it's going to be one of the. I mean, it'll be one of the main storylines. We'll just be looking at front office hires and that sort of thing. No, I have not heard any names on the manager front. I haven't really asked, but like
Other than Skip Schumacher.
Yeah, I mean Skip Schumacher. Getz said there's plenty of candidates that are in uniforms with other clubs. So I'm assuming lots of bench coaches and base coaches, or I'm sure Willie Harris will get his interview. Whatever. But I mean, we'll see.
Yeah. Josh Nathan Strong says manager has to have a player development background. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see how that goes.
Or guys on the staff really need to. But I mean,
yeah, that's the thing, is having the entire
yes, he is.
minor leagues as well. Question: thoughts on fall league guys being sent? There is no definite list yet, as far as I know. I don't think that they've been released yet. I heard that it's supposed to be coming this week, but I have yet to see the list. I just saw the schedule. I do not have a streaming schedule yet.
Yeah.
So I don't know how many highlights I'm going to be able to grab from that. But
the only question at this point is whether they still send Burke or not. But I think the other guys are pretty locked and loaded that we've talked about before.
Yeah, I mean, Michael Turner's going. I like that. He got kind of shorted on catcher time this year with splitting more or less like a 70-30 with Quero in the catching department, so he didn't get to catch. Elko being one of those guys would be awesome. Trying to think, Grant Taylor, obviously we're both excited to see that, if that does as long as that actually does happen, that would be awesome.
And Tim Elko could really make a name for himself.
He could. It happened with a bunch of guys last year. It happens every year. Yeah, and they're the only game in town. So
I think Peyton Pillette's exciting. I mean, it's a reliever probably, but I mean that's a fast mover. So yeah, there's some interesting guys going.
Yeah. If it says, I know you guys don't agree with my Detroit take, but I'm happy with the Orioles' struggles. Guys like Elias, anyone, when they don't trade prospects. Oh my gosh, that's a
take that I can get behind. Them going down early would please me.
I would not be annoyed.
So like I don't know, become internet friends with like a lot of their fans like during trade talk season, and like just like the unrealistic nature of some of these people is like astounding to me, right? Where they're trying to lead like Dylan Cease and Garrett Crochet packages with like Connor Norby, who does have 7 homers for the Marlins, by the way. But I mean, still not enough to headline a deal for like a stud, right? So yes, I hope they go down early, and then they want Garrett Crochet. I think that would be a good outcome.
All right, so let's move on to the Kannapolis Cannon Ballers. Their season came to an end this past week. Now this is where I was going to earlier. Let me go ahead and I'll just bring up this one because this one's a pleasant video. This is Tanner McDougal's outing in the second game of the championship series. And where I was going earlier was in the third game of the championship series here, the Fred Nats starting pitcher was the pitcher of the year in the Carolina League. And he made 20 starts with a 2.33 ERA and a 0.91 whip. And he's the third ranked prospect for the Nationals. And somehow he made it through the entire season without getting bumped up a level and started this playoff, the third championship game. And the guy who closed the game out had appeared in 27 games. He's 25 years old, and he had a 2.87 ERA with a 1 whip. across 27 appearances, and both of these guys are an A-ball throwing in the championship game, and that kind of stuck with me. And I didn't mention it on Twitter at all because I didn't want to be sour grapes, because their team did put together a good effort, but I felt like our guys kind of got the short end of the stick on that.
Yeah, I mean, it's not great. I mean, they like kept all their guys like in low A. I mean, I know like Seaver King was there too after like getting drafted. Like, yeah, they had just like a ton of guys there that it seems like probably should have been in high A. Yeah, it's a little bit annoying. I mean, like the White Sox could have pitched Hagen Smith like for Kannapolis, I guess.
They
like,
could have.
you can fight fire with fire. Like you could rush Grant Taylor back and see how the Fred Nats like that. But no, I mean it is what it is. I mean, that's what happens with these teams. Like we're seeing it in Birmingham right now. We saw it in Kannapolis. Like the first half team was way, way different than the second half team, obviously, but they still like kept winning. I mean, the team got much older. I just feel like you add some of these college guys and guys like Alec McCarowitz, who's like 24 years old, basically. And yeah, you ran into one of the best pitchers in the minor leagues. I think Jim Callis, I don't know if you listen, one of the recent Pipeline podcasts, I think he kind of said he's going to be like a top 50 prospect in baseball, I think.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. He's great. He's a fantastic pitcher. I just, like the issue that I had was that he had made way more than enough to be bumped up. Like
20-some
I don't know, like 6 weeks ago, he could have been promoted. Like he was that good, and the fact that they let him stick through the entire season, and then they just happened to run into him in the third game of the championship series was a little bit rough. Like I said, I didn't complain on Twitter, but my feelings were hurt.
Well, I'm actually kind of surprised because like he's like the demographic that everybody's afraid of because he's like. He was a put together like 6'6" high school flame-throwing Texas righty, right? Everything you've ever thought of with the flamethrower from Texas, a high school kid. And they're maxed out physically and like they usually bust bad because of it. But he's Sikора's pretty good.
Yep. So Doug says Canny could have pitched Smith, which you mentioned. Yeah, they could have. My guess is that Rizzo wanted it more than Chris Getz did, I guess. That's the only way I could say it is he's just like, whatever. But we'll move on to the other playoff series that is ongoing currently. The Barons managed to pull out in a 3-game series a win against the Cubs AA team, the Tennessee Smokies.
Hey.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of that. And I got some really nice pitching from, Quero. He lost, but he pitched really well. And then Schweitzer and Riley Gowans both pitched really well. And the bullpen, did their jobs as well. Really nice series. I'll go ahead and bring up the game from yesterday, which, the Barons just looked like a machine. I haven't seen them look like this offensively in ages. And they just so happened to have Noah Schultz starting.
Yeah, I'm really glad that they like did it, right? Because they could have very easily just shut Noah Schultz down and been like, he's done. It's a day of extra rest just because he's usually your Saturday starter. He went on a Sunday. I think it's great. I mean, he gets an extra 3.1 innings pitched to like add to his total for the year, gets a playoff start. So yeah, I was glad they did it. It's not something that I was super confident that they would do. And then I kind of heard that it was happening, obviously, but it was pretty cool.
Yeah, I was very happy that he got those innings in. I would have been kind of bummed had they not made it to the championship and like given him the opportunity to get his start in. So really awesome. Absolutely, Doug. This video in particular is available on YouTube. So if you want to watch the whole thing, it is available on YouTube.
But I mean, Wilfred Veras was pretty good. Jacob Gonzalez
4 hits.
Jacob Gonzalez went 3 for 5. So they're playing well. Who's the starting pitcher for the next game?
That I don't know. I did not hear who the next guy is because the Montgomery guy was not too thrilled with the outcome. I don't think, and he didn't really talk about a whole lot.
Yeah.
So I'm not entirely sure. I kind of think it's going to be Corella, but I don't know for certain. We'll find out tomorrow.
Yeah, when they, because who did not start from the rotation, from the current rotation? I mean, they've been using Shanley a
uh,
lot, right? Like,
yeah, that was the thing is that they had Shanley filling in since they called up.
yeah, they called up Iriarte, and there's multiple guys went to Charlotte. So
Yeah,
yeah,
Adams and Iriarte both went to Charlotte,
Mhm.
so they were using Shanley as a starter, and he would only go 3 innings, and
Right.
he pitched in this game and was fantastic. Um, but how many of their outfielders will play? Are two still hurt? No, they're not hurt. Varys DH'd in this game and went 4 for 5, and DJ Gladney, who was the other guy, he got hit by a pitch. He played the next day, and it wasn't a problem. One thing that is really awesome to see is that Jacob Gonzalez came back from injury, and his first start they haven't lost since he came back and started. So he's
Well,
hitting the ball really well, and
maybe he was hurt for a long time and it was affecting him.
I mean, entirely possible. I don't know. It's kind of one of those things where it's like you hear about these things afterwards.
Of
Oh,
course.
he was playing all year. I just heard who is that? Pat Listash talking about Oscar Colas, saying that he's had a knee injury all year and he's finally healthy now. So it's just like these guys with their nagging injuries, and you never hear about it until 4 months later, and you're like, oh, okay, well that kind of makes sense. Like where did Oscar Colas's speed go and stuff like that. So, yeah, but I don't have the batting averages up in front of me right this second, but there are a bunch of guys that are putting up nice averages and some huge OPS numbers through these playoffs so far.
Yep, it's pretty interesting. And the minor league season's the Charlotte's done, right? So there's 6 big league games and hopefully one more Birmingham Barons game.
That's what I'm hoping for. I'm hoping for that one more. We'll see. They need one more win here to get done with this, and let's hope it comes
Yeah,
tomorrow. We'll see.
right? Yeah, we will see.
Let's see here. Zach Franklin, the last pitcher. This is the next to last pitcher, I believe.
Yeah,
No,
Zach
this is.
Franklin's been pretty good for a 10th rounder.
Yeah, he's been pretty awesome this year. Last year he had like in his innings that he his first innings that from being drafted, he had a couple of rough outings there, but yeah, he's been awesome. Been really good this year. And then Eric Adler gave up one hit, but also been very good this year. So, all right. So, you got anything else left this week, James?
I don't think so. We covered a whole bunch. I'm sure there's more coming. There are rumors that there are more White Sox articles coming. So everybody's very interested in dropping their record pieces, their pieces on the worst team of all time. So, that's
Yeah.
we'll see. And then the next time we check in, like maybe it'll be, oh Jesus, 13-4. Yeah.
Yeah, that's bad. Yeah,
And
I
that's
would
not
have
gonna
to say
happen. And
that.
that's not
Yeah,
gonna happen. So
no chance.
um no, I just think, I don't think we're totally sure yet. Like the next time we're gonna hop on, I think we'd like to see what time Chris Getz is gonna talk, see if any news breaks. So yeah, but we'll be back soon to break down the season ending press conference and any interesting things that happen in these big league games. If Edgar Quero gets some time, if some of the young pitchers, continue to do pretty well. The Gregory Santos trade looks pretty good right now, I think. A lot of people thought that one wasn't very good. Prelander Baroa looks pretty good. And
Yeah,
they got
yeah, for
what
sure.
Blake Larson at 68 overall. That's it's not looking like a bad trade.
Zach Deloach, I mean, like you know, you
Third,
can hit a little
third,
bit, and
third piece. It's
yeah,
fine.
I'll take it. Well, James, I will say here, if you have not seen our pinned tweet, you should go look at our pinned tweet, and you'll see Riku in all of his glory.
Mm.
All right, so FutureSox.net, you can find all of our written content, including Sleepy Harold's next to last trending on the farm until the fall league. He'll have some smaller trending on the farms here in the Arizona Fall League. But you can find that. You can find our top 30s that we talk about. You can find write-ups on everybody. There's also a link to support us on Patreon if you feel the desire to do so. At FutureSox on Twitter. If you are listening to this in podcast form, know that we do a live stream when we do this. We do it on YouTube on Monday nights at 8 during football season.
High school football.
High school football season. Other than that, we do it Sunday at 8, but right now we are on Mondays at 8. So you can watch it there, and you can also watch it at twitch.tv/FutureSox. We have 2 other streams / podcasts on this network, which have been kind of, Elijah's running around the planet, and Danny's running around the planet, and Nick's got a bunch of stuff because his wife's running for president or something. I don't know. So those have been a little bit scarce as of late, but they will pop back here at some point. My name is Ian Eskridge at Daily White Sox. He is James Fox at James Fox 917. We appreciate your guys' time so much. Thanks for coming and hanging out in chat. We appreciate you guys.